Welcome to Fearless with Jason Whitlock. I'm Jason Whitlock, your host. Happy Wednesday. Awesome. This show is going to be awesome. Dynamic. I didn't think we could top yesterday's show in terms of a unique idea, but we've done it again. And if you missed yesterday's show, you should go watch it. I put the case together that if Caitlin Clark somehow wins the WNBA championship this year, she will have put together the greatest rookie season in the history of professional sports. I explained it all on yesterday's show. I've written a column about it. You can find it on my Twitter page. Anyway, we're going to top that today. Going to include Caitlin Clark in the conversation, as I like to do. But we're also going to bring the NFL, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, Jordan Love, Charles Barkley into this conversation. Deion Sanders. It's just going to be a whole big ball of things I like to talk about. The National Football League, Caitlin Clark, Deion Sanders, all in the same boat with historical perspective and knowledge. And more than anything, I'm going to blast the media. The mainstream corporate media combined its love affair of social media has greatly diminished sports and athletes and our whole experience with the sports world. Let me start by playing you a clip from Charles Barkley. He was on Bill Simmons' podcast. It's making news today. Let's start there. I want to play this clip of Charles Barkley talking about the Caitlin Clark phenomenon and the people he blames for blowing this whole Caitlin Clark deal.
These ladies, and I'm a WNBA fan, they cannot have this Caitlin Clark thing up any worse if they tried. People believe what we say on television. Just because people don't like you or your personality, they can't get on TV and slander you. It's just total bullshit. This girl is incredible. The number of attention, eyeballs, she's brought to college and the pros, and for these women to have this petty jealousness, you say to yourself, damn, what is going on here? And the thing I love about her, she never says a word. But these ladies who I love and respect their game, they couldn't have this thing up any worse. There's been so much negativity, and a lot of it is just petty jealousness.
Hey, I like Charles Barkley, and I like Bill Simmons, but they got this conversation wrong. The ladies, the active players in the WNBA, they haven't screwed up anything. They've made Caitlin Clark more interesting. They've made Caitlin Clark the biggest star in American sports, bigger than all the men. She's the biggest star in all of sports. I'm not saying these women did it intentionally, but their little petty jealousy and sniping at Caitlin Clark is why 2 million people are tuning in to watch Caitlin Clark play basketball and to watch a bunch of other women blow layups every night. Caitlin Clark is fascinating because she's juxtaposed and compared to a bunch of women who aren't that interesting. They're mean-spirited, they're petty and jealousy. You got a good guy, Caitlin Clark, and a bad guy. The players that are jealous and envious, but this is what you want. The people that have blown this are the media. Let me tie it all together for you. Tomorrow night, we will all be, or most of us will be, enjoying Patrick Mahomes versus Lamar Jackson, Kansas City Chiefs versus Baltimore Ravens on Thursday Night Football. the National Football League is about to kick off. It'll be great, but it won't be as great as it used to be. And that's because of the media. Again, the media are the people that didn't do their job properly as it related to Caitlin Clark. You can go all the way back to Iowa when the interest and fascination of her skyrocketed and took off the roof. It was because of her excellent play, but then Angel Reese injected herself into the Caitlin Clark narrative and played the role of the bad guy, the villain, and the media played along with it. With Angel Reese, and she didn't do anything wrong. You remember when Angel Reese won the championship and then got all up in Caitlin Clark's face, waving her hand, and the media started dignifying that and justifying that and legitimizing that? That was Angel Reese playing the bad guy, and she needed to be called out by the media for being the bad guy and for taunting Caitlin Clark, and no one did in a real way other than me and a handful of other people, because they were all afraid that the media would call them racist. The media is actually destroying sports. Not the actual competitors, it's the media. I'll tell you how it relates to the National Football League kickoff. Kicks off on Thursday, tomorrow night. Blockbuster matchup, Kansas City Chiefs, Baltimore Ravens. Then it moves to Friday night. Green Bay Packers and Jordan Love, Philadelphia Eagles and Jalen Hurts in Brazil. And what does ESPN and its affinity site Landscape, what do they lean into? What ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports, they're doing stories. Half of the quarterbacks in the NFL are black. Black, black, black. The blackity blacks are doing blackity black. Black, black, black. No one cares. This whole narrative, these black quarterbacks are rising. The black quarterbacks are coming. That's been over for a long time. Won Super Bowls, played in Super Bowls, inducted into the Hall of Fame, MVPs, first-round draft picks, but ESPN and Landscape can't find anything more compelling to do than tell everybody, hey, half the quarterbacks in the NFL are black. Black, black. Oh, this black person made history. This is the first black person to do this, to do that, to do this, to do that. And it actually diminishes the sport, the platform, and the position. The media is the one blowing the job. Here's how Landscape started out its article. For years, sports writers contacted black quarterback pioneers James Shaq Harris and Doug Williams, seeking comment each time a young African-American passer led a team to the NFL playoffs for the first time. Aware of the cultural significance of black men thriving at the most important position in sports, a position that historically was off limits to them, the journalists gained insight and context from Harris and Williams about a seismic shift occurring on the field. Then suddenly, reporters stopped calling. So many black men have become star QBs. Williams explained their rise to the top of the league is no longer a novelty. Then quit writing about it. Quit talking about it. Quit shoving it in everyone's face. Quit making sports and the stars unlikable. Because that is what's happening. Because not all of America, including not all of black America, is a racial idolater that tunes into sports thinking they're watching a replay of Roots and 12 Years a Slave. The media is the one that keeps quoting idiot athletes and never pushing back when they say, hey, this is like slavery. Yes, I know Patrick Mahomes is getting paid $50 million a year, but trust me, it's just like slavery. And Colin Kaepernick, he's been pushed off the plantation, not the plantation. Yes, the plantation, it's slavery. He's been pushed off. It's so racist in the NFL, but he's spent 6-7 years working out, hoping to get back on the plantation. They just beat our brains in with slavery, race, black. And that's not what sports are about. All of this division that the media continues to promote. And when they see people acting inappropriate in a racist fashion, they don't call it out. Blaming these players for being petty and mirroring the mentality of the media and everything else they see, it ain't on them. If the media didn't tolerate it, it would go away. See, the next time, if Don Staley accuses some fan at Brigham Young University of shouting the N-word at a black volleyball player from Duke and then announces, I'm not going to play basketball at Brigham Young because a volleyball player at Duke allegedly got called the N-word, and then Stephen A. Smith and everybody, they all hop on the bandwagon, racism. My overall point in all of this, we spent a lot of times this morning trying to figure out who are the biggest stars in sports. And I'm the one pushing the argument in our conference call. And there's 8 or 9 of us on the conference call talking this through. I'm the one pushing the argument that Caitlin Clark is the biggest star in American sports. And I stand by it because she's the only one capable of taking nothing and making it something. The WNBA was nothing before Caitlin Clark. And she has made it into something. And again, it's mostly her and her team. But I'm paying attention to the entire WNBA, and so are other people because of Caitlin Clark. I now know who Asia Wilson is. I know what her game is about. I know how great she is because of Caitlin Clark. The Arike Amagawali, and I'm sorry if I messed up the name, the girl in Dallas. That girl's a baller. The only reason I know it is because of Caitlin Clark. She's made herself a star, and she's made other players in that league fascinating and interesting. There's not one other American athlete that could do what Caitlin Clark has done for the WNBA or for any league. These guys are all working off of platforms that were already built long before they got there, and they have not elevated that platform. Patrick Mahomes, I love him to death. But he's not elevating the National Football League. He's helping them maintain, but he's not elevating. LeBron James has diminished the NBA, made it less compelling, less relevant because of his narcissistic, selfish mentality, his cheat code to win NBA titles. He's diminished the game. It's less competitive. And so we look across, why is Caitlin Clark so fascinating? And why is Charles Barkley wrong? Because those women that are petty and jealous and have some animus towards Caitlin Clark, that's old school sport. We got a good guy and a bad guy. We got real competition. They don't like each other. And when they get on the court, things get a little chippy and lines get crossed. Good guy, bad guy. Sports have always been that way. Real competition, real tension. LeBron James and this current generation, they've removed all of that competition. They've removed that tension. We've allowed it. All of the butt kissing of LeBron James. No pushback against LeBron James from the corporate media. Everybody kissing his rear end. Because they want access and they want to be part of the club and they don't want the social media blowback. And so now we have a bunch of unlikable sports stars for the most part. And that's why they're not as popular, as relevant, as important as the previous generation. We struggle. I was like, hey, let's come up with a top 10 list of the most important, impactful, compelling, biggest stars in sports right now, in 2024. And then I said, let's compare it to what we had in 1984, 40 years ago. Because we struggled to get to this top 10. Go back. Let me go through the 2024 list. I got Caitlin Clark at the top. Good guy. I got Deion Sanders, number 2. He's the other person with an audience. People love to hate Deion. People love to root for Deion. People watch Colorado football, which isn't that good. He had a 4-8 team last year, last place in the Big 12, but people tuned in to watch Deion stand on the sidelines with gold chains and make a fool of himself. He's a TV star. He's the second biggest star in all of sports. I have to admit that. He's tapped into something completely different than Caitlin Clark, but he is a star. Then it gets dicey. Obviously, LeBron James is a huge star, but he ain't driving nothing. There's a slight compared to his NBA peers. When LeBron's on TV, yeah, people are more apt to watch. But in comparison to the way Magic and Larry and Michael and Isaiah and that generation elevated the league, LeBron James has not elevated the NBA at all. He's diminished it. But he's the third biggest American sports star we have going right now. Patrick Mahomes. I got him 4. And he deserves that. And he's tapped into, he's not hated the way LeBron is at all. He's actually liked, and probably with his wife coming out as some kind of closeted MAGA person, he'll probably get even more popular. Patrick has kind of stayed out of the politics ever since the heavy, hardcore BLM stuff. That again, if the media had done its job and called out these players for their BS BLM support, these leagues wouldn't be as diminished. These players wouldn't be as polarizing. These players wouldn't be as disliked as they are. Then I got Steph Curry at number 4. Steph's mostly likable, but he's fallen into the woke BS. He plays out there in San Francisco. He's out there with Steve Kerr. He does all the woke posturing. But he's mostly likable, small guy. And then the next thing you know, in my view, we're all the way down to Travis Kelce, who's piggybacking off of Taylor Swift. The 5th or 6th biggest star in all of American sports is Travis Kelce, who has to piggyback off of Taylor Swift. He's a tight end, great player, but he ain't all that. Then I got Lamar Jackson, Aaron Rodgers, Kevin Durant, Simone Biles. That's my. But it was hard coming up. Notice there's no baseball players on this list. There's not a lot of diversity. Athletes have been diminished in this era. They're not likable. They're not as revered or as respected. We know too much about them. They've exposed too much of themselves over social media. All the hedonistic materialism and the gold chains and all of it. It's just, I'm a former athlete. All of my friends are basically, my longtime friends are all basically former athletes at the college and pro level. I like athletes. I don't like this generation. They come off as rappers, unlikable rappers. They don't stand for anything. That's how you end up with a woman who plays in a league that had zero relevance and traction just a year ago as the biggest star in American sports going today. I'm not talking about the retired. Don't throw Serena into this. Don't throw Tom Brady into this. These guys, they're out. I'm talking about current athletes. And then we compared it to 1984. And it was just an endless list of athletes. I didn't put them in any particular order, but there's just an endless list of athletes who were relevant, who were revered, who were respected, who were must-see TV, who were talked about and discussed. And now it's just a handful. I guess I could have thrown Kevin Durant onto that list. Maybe we got to 11. I don't know. Maybe I've overlooked someone. But it ain't like in 1984, when you just start doing the research and I'm tapping into memory, it's just a long list. Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Dr. J, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, John McEnroe, Joe Montana, Mike Singletary, Ronnie Lott, Walter Payton, Darrell Waltrip, Dan Marino, Nolan Ryan, Pete Rose, Carl Lewis, John Elway, Mary Lou Retton, Larry Holmes, Sugar Ray Leonard, Marvelous Marvin Hagler, Chris Evert. It's just, there were stars everywhere. We used to like and revere and respect athletes. The media ruined that by failing to do its job, by baiting these guys into being woke social justice warriors, racial idolaters. Their whole storyline about everything is this person made history. He's the first black left-handed offensive guard to ever line up on 1st and 5 and do a bump block that led to a first down on 1st and 5. He just made history. Oh, she's the first black female with long fingernails to get a double-double in a game where they won by 3 points and were down 7 at halftime, and so-and-so was sitting courtside. She just made history. All of this black history, racial history, the first gay person, the first transgender person, they've ruined sports. They've diminished the biggest stars. We're starting the football season out, which is clearly our most dominant, relevant sport, and a woman sits above all the biggest stars in football. She's got more heat, more relevance, more pull, more influence, a more passionate fan base than anybody in the National Football League. Could you imagine that? How did we get here? Barkley wants to blame the athletes. They couldn't have effed this. The athletes have actually, I'm telling you, they've made Caitlin Clark spicier and better and a bigger deal than anything. They've done their job. They've been human. It's the media that's failed. It's the media. Remember, let's go back to Larry Bird. Could start with Larry Bird and Magic Johnson, but just think how spicy it was between Larry Bird and the Detroit Pistons. And Dennis Rodman came out and took a shot at Larry Bird. He'd just be another white guy, or he'd just be another NBA player if he were black. And you know what the media did back then? They pushed back against Dennis Rodman. And they took it to Isaiah Thomas. And then they took Isaiah out of context and, turned it into Isaiah's racist or whatever. But the media pushed back. You say something stupid, the media used to push back and call the athletes out. Hey, you got to justify that ignorance. Larry Bird, just another player? I mean, are you watching? That's crazy. And people questioned it. And it made Larry Bird more interesting. And the media actually did its job. Now they don't. And athletes are far less interesting, far less compelling. And look at the ratings on the NFL. There's more people in the United States than there was 40 years ago. They now count viewers completely different. Out of home television viewing now counts. They do all sorts of things. No, the NFL doesn't have the level of influence that it used to have. And if it does, or let's say it does, it's because everything else around it is more diminished. Again, the NFL used to compete against great television shows that people watched en masse. Now we have garbage television shows that there's no destination TV shows. That ended at about the 5th season of Game of Thrones. There's only live sports. The only thing that draws a massive audience and gets everybody water cooler conversation. We used to have water cooler conversations. Who shot J.R. Ewing? TV show Dallas. Look it up. Charlie's Angels used to be a big deal. All kinds of shows. The Cosby Show used to be a big deal. We don't have that anymore. There's no destination TV. It's just live sports. So yes, the NFL's winning because everybody else is losing. But you know who's not losing? Caitlin Clark and the WNBA. And this is, in my view, and Steve Kim may come in here and disagree with me, but this is the most subdued start to the National Football League in my lifetime. It's starting tomorrow. Defending Super Bowl champs, Patrick Mahomes, the biggest star in football, 2-time MVP, Lamar Jackson, and it's a subdued start to the National Football League in comparison to what it used to be. And I know everybody's playing fantasy football. I know everybody's gambling and all that, but and look, I'll be watching. But thank God Caitlin Clark's not playing at the same time, because then it might be a coin flip. I may have to go 2 screens. I don't know. So that's my setup for today's conversation with Steve Kim. Steve may have some pushback here, may disagree with me. I'm sure he'll have some different thoughts than me. On the back end of the show, we'll do some Tennessee Harmony with Anthony, Virgil, and Kevin Donahue. We'll have a discussion about Vodi Bakum. And Vodi Bakum, I saw a sermon where he said race is a social construct. Fits right in perfectly with what I'm doing on the rest of this show. We'll hear from Anthony, Virgil, and Kevin on that. Is race a social construct? When Isaiah Thomas used to tell me this, friends used to tell me this, I didn't fully understand it, but I get it now, and I tend to agree with them. So we'll do that on the back end of the show with some Tennessee Harmony. But before we get into any of that, we'll bring on Steve Kim, and we'll further this discussion about where we are in sports and who's really to blame. Again, to me, Charles Barkley's got it all wrong here. It's the media. They've screwed up the Caitlin Clark thing. They haven't maximized the Caitlin Clark thing. We haven't. Don't remove myself from that. Before I get Steve Kim, I want to tell you guys about what Allie Beth Stuckey's got going on that I think is a great opportunity for the woman in your life or the women in your life. On September 28th in Dallas, Texas, Share the Arrows event, a day dedicated to equipping women with the clarity and courage to navigate today's world with conviction and grace. This isn't just any event, it's a chance to come together with fellow women who are ready to stand firm in truth and fellowship. It will be led by our very own Allie Beth Stuckey, as well as incredible speakers, including Rosaria Butterfield, Alisa Childers, and Abby Haberstadt. Plus, there will be music from Francesca Battistelli. This event is made possible with the generous support of Carly Jean Los Angeles, a brand that aligns with our values of truth and faith. Help all the God-fearing women in your life experience powerful teaching, encouraging fellowship, and inspiring worship by attending this amazing event. Go to sharethearrows.com today and select from the following packages: general admission, the breakfast package, the VIP package, and the premium all access package. That's sharethearrows.com. Go there today. Steve Kim, next. back to beef as I walk you through my top 50 media beefs of all time. Yeah, I'm an equal opportunity beefer. It's like, Randy, are you asleep at the wheel? Big lips are in style. I'd love to squash this beef. I mean, I was not real happy at all. I was less than thrilled. I was displeased. And now we have beef.
모두 다 빨리 박수 쳐 기다리지 말고 서둘러 Reason that I'm back is to feed you raps and I see that you are 배불러 So fly
All right, welcome back. Let's roll out to Los Angeles, bring in your favorite person on the show, my least favorite person on the show, Steve Kim, the Korean Cosell. Cosell, I've just argued that Charles Barkley's wrong, that the current players haven't ruined the Caitlin Clark deal. They've actually made it more interesting and spicy. I've just argued that Caitlin Clark is the biggest star in American sports. You've probably heard me make that argument before, but let's start with Barkley. Who's right here, me or Charles Barkley?
I'm with you, and I've said this for a while. Modern day media / journalism does not have reporters or journalists. They have activists. And there's no doubt about it that they try to play this role and they try to step on this fine line. Well, they will only tell the truth when it's convenient, safe, and easy. In other words, when you want to be critical of someone that's white, you're the toughest guy out there. But when it's time to say something about anyone that's a quote unquote person of color, now they start trying to play social justice warrior. They start to justify bad behavior because, quite frankly, it may not be good for their careers. And a lot of them are gutless to a point. It'll affect their algorithms and their popularity on social media. And I don't think there's any doubt about it. They want to be safe. They don't want to be branded as prejudiced or racist because you're always going to get that if you say certain things that are absolutely empirically true. It really does not matter. And that's what's gone on. You have to have some thick skin in this game if you really want to do the job correctly.
So, Caitlin Clark should have been being defended at Iowa the way Stephen A. Smith and Charles Barkley and others are now jumping to her defense. It's now safe. It's so clear-cut how much better she is than Angel Reese that now it's safe for everybody to come out of the closet and say, oh, boy, this thing is ridiculous. They could have been, as soon as Angel Reese did this thing, when they won the national championship 2 years ago, that's when I first was like, I don't like Angel Reese. She's not nearly the type of player that Caitlin Clark is. She's piggybacking off Caitlin Clark. People could have been calling this out then. Instead, we had Shaq calling Angel Reese the GOAT of LSU basketball. What are you watching? And we had all this pandering to Angel Reese that pretty much has come to a screeching halt in the last 10 days, late to the party, in my view.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, look, I think it really took guts 3-4 years ago to question a certain vaccine. You do it now, as you reverse position, how much credit should you really get? I mean, it is so obvious now that this whole thing is still lopsided. And here, look, let's be honest about this, Jason. As of even a month ago, people were still trying to prop up Angel Reese as the rookie of the year. I really have to question not only your basketball intellect, but your honesty if you still think this is a race. It's not. And there's no doubt about it. When you defended Angel Reese or pretended to be a fan or championed her, you were absolutely virtue signaling. This is almost like your way of saying, hey, punch my ticket to the cookout. Come on. I like her. I like to buy you Barbie. But can we be honest about this in retrospect from when we first started talking about this to now? If this was a hip hop beef or a battle, this would be Eminem against Benzino. It's a complete mismatch. This isn't LL against Cool Mo D, and that's like the last one I know of. I haven't kept track of hip-hop beefs in the last 40 years. But this thing is so lopsided. I mean, we're literally talking about someone, if they were, again, an artist. Caitlin Clark is like stacking up gold and platinum albums on her wall, while the other person, Angel, she's basically a SoundCloud rapper. I mean, honestly, it's not even a debate at this point. It would almost like me saying, hey, who's the more effective player, Magic Johnson or Buck Williams? And again, no disrespect to Buck. He was a very good player, but no one would make that comparison when you talked about the NBA in the 1980s. And again, no disrespect to Buck Williams. Fine player.
Let me help you out here, and I don't want to disrespect Drake with this, but basically what you're saying is that NBA players like Dwight Howard are screaming when they see Angel Reese, not like us. They're actually going Kendrick Lamar and saying, she's not like us. And so this is Kendrick versus Drake, although I would not put Angel Reese in the same classification as Drake. But my other angle on this that we'll spend a bit more time on is that the whole racial thing that the media leans into in terms of black this, this is the first time we've had 15 black starting quarterbacks and blah, blah, blah. People are just tired of it. And no one tomorrow is tuning in because the Ravens and the Chiefs have 2 black quarterbacks. That's not how football fans think. That's not how people that really care about sports thinks. They want to just see the Chiefs and the Ravens, arguably the 2 best teams in the AFC, battle it out in the season opener. But this is like the only trick, the only pony that the media knows how to ride, and it's to lean, hey, half the quarterbacks are black, and, you know, the 4 quarterbacks open the weekend, they're all black. When, and I know I'm the wrong, I shouldn't be asking you this, you should probably be asking me this, but when will it end? How many black quarterbacks is enough?
Well, you know what would be a big story to me, Jason? Hey, this such and such team has a pair of Asian cornerbacks. Now that would be a story because the whole novelty of the black quarterback to me is completely gone. I saw that you read the first paragraph or 2 of that Anscape story. It's almost like that they were upset that progress has been made and that there's actually black quarterbacks. I mean, Jason, I've showed you this book before. I remember buying this back in 1990. The Doug Williams book, Quarter Black. And back then it was a story. This is 3 years after he won the Super Bowl. And it really detailed his travels from Zachary, Louisiana to Grambling and some of the stuff that he went through. Real hardship with Hugh Culverhouse and how he was targeted as a black quarterback. I truly believe a guy like Doug Williams had to face obstacles and hurdles and prejudice that today's quarterback, I would say for the last 20 years, has not faced. It is no longer a story. And as I watch college football games all throughout Saturday with Coach JB, a lot of quarterbacks are black. Just the style of play, the system, the spread offense, the up-tempo, even the fact that now it's no longer taboo to run the ball as a quarterback. In fact, they called more designed running plays for quarterbacks probably since, the wing T was run. It is not a novelty anymore. And I've said this to you before, Jason. If you go back even to the late 80s, whether you were Spurgeon Wynn or Dante Culpepper, you were pretty much drafted based on merit. I don't remember a situation like, really, Warren Moon won the Rose Bowl MVP at Washington with this rocket arm. And he was then forced, because he was undrafted, to have this legendary career as an Edmonton Eskimo, won 5 Grey Cups, right? Jason, can you name me another quarterback because he was black and athletic, was not really drafted where he should have been? I can't really think of one, to be honest with you, since that point.
I got to go back. I would have to go way back in history, shortly. I think Steve Clarkson, maybe a year or 2 younger than Warren Moon. He wasn't even drafted. He should have been drafted, and wasn't drafted primarily because he was a black quarterback. But that was years ago. That's out the window now. Steve, here's what really bothers me, and I'm going to get myself into trouble here. we can't have an honest conversation about the quarterback position because of the way the media manipulates that conversation, because what has happened is they've made the game easier for the athletic quarterback. It's just a fact. And you know, Tom Brady at some point is going to get in trouble for talking about how much easier they've made the quarterback position. Someone's going to play the race card on him. But it is factually true. All the way from there's a microphone or an earpiece in your helmet. You don't have to call the plays. And the risk of throwing over the middle and reading the defense, less important. We can't have that conversation because we've been divided up along these racial lines rather than human lines, and just saying like, hey, a guy with Cam or Lamar's athletic ability would probably be playing a different position if the game hadn't evolved to where, you know, you don't have to play from the pocket nearly as much, and, you know, the cost of misreading the defense isn't nearly as harsh. We should be having that conversation, but we can't because you'll be called racist.
Well, Jason, to be fair, the headsets and the helmets have been around for a while. And I don't know the last quarterback that truly called his own plays. I mean, you could say Peyton Manning ran his own offense with his own checks, but most quarterbacks are now given a game plan. They have the wristbands. But here's the issue, though. I'm
going further back in history, but go ahead.
Okay, this is how racial it's gotten. I remember the year that Mahomes won his first Super Bowl. And I think it was the year where they were down to the Houston Texans 24-0 after about 5 minutes of football. Then he scored the next 50 points. And I remember writing a tweet saying, wow, that was an amazing performance by the Chiefs and Mahomes. This is his league for the next dozen years. It was just a complete praising of what I thought was going to be the most important player in the National Football League. And a certain group of people on Twitter all said, nah, see, it's Lamar. And they made comments where I said, oh, I get it. The brown paper bag test. One guy's half white. The other guy's a white mother. I get it. And the other guy's, you know, he's a little bit more dark. I get it. And I'm thinking to myself, this is where it's come down to, where in certain comparisons, now Mahomes becomes the quote unquote white quarterback. You cannot win in these discussions sometimes.
No, you can't. And there's certain things, I'm not going to go political, but, you know, those of you on the Blaze know that there are certain conversations that cannot be had. There's certain parts of history that can't be talked about, can't be evaluated, because, boy, oh boy, you're immediately anti-Semitic. There's things about athletics right now that can't be talked about in proper context, because, boy, oh boy, you'll be called racist or anti-black. And everything gets less interesting. Everything becomes phony and fraudulent. And that's one of the reasons why, obviously, I'll be watching Thursday, but my passion for the NFL and for football isn't nearly as high as it used to be. And my actual passion for the WNBA, and it's the play, the play is ugly. There's a lot of missed layups, but I believe it's genuine competition, and that for me, I can say anything I want about the WNBA. I can defend or criticize Caitlin Clark. I certainly can rip Angel Reese or defend her rebounding. She is an elite rebounder, but it feels like I have more freedom to discuss the WNBA in ways that I just don't have that freedom in the National Football League.
Well, Jason, as I turn this back to the WNBA, I can't believe I said that. The world's about to come to an end. But have you noticed that certain voices that were so vociferous about 3 months ago are all of a sudden quiet? They're not saying anything about the ascension of Miss Clark. I mean, they were the biggest voices. They had the megaphone. You know who I'm talking about. And I love the fact that Shannon Sharp, about 5 days ago, flat out said, "Why am I not hearing you anymore? Because I am calling you people out that were so loud and boisterous when someone was really a target of some unfair coverage." And then one of the other major WNBA media figures puts out a tweet. "There's so much I could say right now, but I won't, but because it's my peaceful time," or something. I'm thinking to myself, you know what? If Angel Reese was scoring 40 points a game on 55% shooting, you'd be saying everything you want to. You'd be tweeting out more than I do. It is so.
Who are we talking about? Put a name on it.
I don't even know. She's such an irrelevant figure to me, but I saw the thing and I reached. But she's a major WNBA media figure. Okay, and she was part of Team Angel. All of a sudden, Charlie's Angels has fallen apart here because they have nothing to go by. But it's funny, Monica McNutt, all of a sudden, she doesn't exist. Why? I mean, she was the one pointing the finger, accusing everybody of ignoring the WNBA. You could have been covering this 4 years ago if you wanted your show canceled. Now, all of a sudden, instead of uplifting what has been one of the greatest rookie seasons in WNBA history, it's funny, I don't hear her giving a lot of praise to her. Interesting.
It's not okay. Now, Steve, what my overall narrative that the media's done such a horrible job of policing, shepherding the sports world, that and social media has had such a negative influence that we don't create as many sports stars as we used to. Am I on shaky ground here? Solid ground? Your thoughts?
Here's my beliefs. When we were growing up in the 80s, okay, we basically had ABC, CBS, NBC, and then a burgeoning network called ESPN. And whoever they wanted to push, they became stars, like the names you listed. And by the way, one more I would have added was Mary Lou Retton coming out of the 84 Olympics. She was unbelievably...
She was listed.
Oh, she was? Okay, sorry about that. But I think with more sports being covered, I think there's actually a thinning out of the impact of any individual athlete. Like, think about it. The National Football League, the Monday night game was so important. It was the only regular prime time game. But Jason, as we fast forward to now, you have the Thursday night game, which is on Amazon, which a lot of people like me, Jason, I'll be honest, I just watch that game or the highlights on NFL Network when they replay it. I just say, look, I'm not going to get another streaming service. I'm too lazy. Then you have a Sunday night game in addition to all the red zone. And I'm more of a red zone watcher than an individual game. Then you have, Monday night. And there are times now, Jason, they give you 2 Monday night games, which I absolutely hate. So there's like a thinning out of the impact of any individual athlete. There used to be destination viewing that if you had the NBA on CBS, I kind of knew that from late November all the way to the playoffs, every Sunday I was going to watch an NBA game. That was nationally televised. I don't know if that even exists anymore. And because of that, I think the athletes, they all get more exposure. Like, remember when NBC got into the Notre Dame business? So everyone thought Notre Dame had this monopoly on recruiting because, oh my God, they get every one of their home games on NBC. They're the only team that's going to be on every week. Jason, every college football team now, basically, you can watch every single one of their games. Even Ball State, because I've seen you do it. So I think that right there has lessened the impact of the actual stars because everyone is getting a certain amount of coverage.
It's a great point in terms of if you have fewer large platforms,
right,
it's easier to create superstars.
Yes.
Because you can put a lot of spotlight on them in a 3-hour broadcast, a 2-hour broadcast, or whatever. And now that there's so many things, people, there is no destination game. There's 16 of them every weekend,
And Jason,
virtually in the NFL. Yeah, go ahead.
Look at television. When we grew up in the 80s, the number 1 through 10 shows all seemed to get 20 to 30 million viewers because it was basically like the Cosby Show and then later must-see TV on Thursdays, Dallas. But now you have Netflix, you have Peacock. I mean, basically, when I grew up, when I went home and I watched TV, I basically had very, very few choices, right? And you had to kind of be there. Happy Days, Different Strokes, those were destination viewing. Now you have ESPN Plus, you have The Zone, and then they all produce their own original programming. I mean, I didn't know this, but that game on Friday in Brazil where all the players are going to have to like be hostages in their hotel, that's on the Peacock. I'm just going to watch the highlights. Like, I'll be watching BYU SMU on ESPN Plus. I'm just too lazy to get Peacock. I actually think the rise of these...
Let me tell you, the other point to fill in the gaps here, or to buttress your point, is we grew up in a time as kids where there were 1 or 2 TVs in your house.
Yes.
That's it. And so, no phone, no laptop, no YouTube, no this, or no Netflix, just like you said. And so let's say it's more easy for casual fans to know who Patrick Mahomes is back in the 80s because it's just like, well, it was on in my house. I wasn't really paying attention to it. I heard people talking about the game Joe Namath had or the game that, so O.J. Simpson had or whatever. And so even when I would go to school as a kid, there would be some girl who really didn't care about football, but because she's hanging with her family, maybe she watched the football game too. And so she would know who Walter Payton was, even though she wasn't a big football. So it was much easier to market these guys to a much wider audience. Now that everybody is in their own little room in the house with their own cell phone, own laptop, iPad, watching whatever it is they want, it is much harder to introduce the casual fan to specific athletes.
Jason, Monday Night Football, you didn't dare turn that channel or do anything else because when that halftime show came on and Howard Cosell would do those NFL highlights with the NFL films, and he would just, with the music, you'd be like, man, that Tommy Kramer, that guy's pretty good. Or you'd be like, Don Strock came on. I mean, you kind of knew like, well, that was prime real estate. And now by the time you get to Monday night, Jason, you've seen every game, you've seen every highlight. And on YouTube, they have networks now that chop up every game and you can watch them in 40 minutes without the commercials. So I really think the irony is, as there's more platforms and more networks and more coverage, it actually dilutes the impact of a supposed star.
You know what I'm now thinking about, even a larger point that somewhat disconnected from sports, but just all of this technology and all this individualism and individual entertainment, we're just more disconnected altogether in terms of like, if there was a popular rock song, even though I listen to R&B, soul music, I would know, Beth, I hear you calling, Kiss, or whatever. I would know songs that I had no interest in just because, we all listen to the same car radio, or there was just less options. Now you can go down a path where, again, there's less connectivity among human beings because we're all off in our own little rabbit holes.
I mean, Jason, just look at the word and what it means, programming. They are programming you. And I think back then we were probably much more easily influenced and programmed in terms of what is cool, what is liked, and what is disseminated in terms of pop culture. And this is a little bit later in the 80s, but I go back to the popularity of the song The Macarena. I hated that song. I thought it was corny. I just could not wait to get it out of my ear. But it was so ubiquitous. I'm not going to lie to you. By 3 months, I was kind of singing along. And it's like they kind of trained us. It's almost like hypnosis that, hey, this song is popular. It is good. You will eventually learn to love it. I don't know if you could really do a Macarena anymore, because nowadays, even when I work out, Jason, I don't listen to a radio station or even a DVD or a CD. You know what I do? I go to YouTube Music, and if I wanted to listen to Rock Me Amadeus by Falco, I just get to punch it up, and it comes up on my algorithm. So the way we even get pop entertainment, in a way, will lessen the impact of a pop star. So I think it would be much more difficult for us just to say, hey, you have to like Janet Jackson or Michael Jackson or Whitney. We have more choices now.
Steve, before I let you go, I want to do a little daily dose of Deion and inject him into this conversation, but off on a little different tangent. Just as we go into the weekend, obviously big Thursday night NFL game, I'm living for Saturday night and Deion and Nebraska. Deion has changed his tune as it relates to Matt Rhule. And I want to get your thoughts. Let's start with him last year talking about how personal this Nebraska game was. I think this is his pregame speech last year about how personal it was. And he and Shador went back and forth. They took some pot shots at Matt Rhule. Matt Rhule somehow disrespected them in some way. But this is Deion, I believe, in the locker room, it's personal speech.
Now, see, I pride myself on being a great father. They say most African-American men are not great fathers, but the devil is a lie. See, one thing about a father, a real father, I don't care what ethnicity, if you say something about his kids, it's personal. If you say something about his woman, it's personal. If you just come on his property or do something that you have no business doing, it gets personal. And the reason it's so personal to me is they said something about my kids. You think I'm gonna let them talk about y'all and they ain't gonna be personal? You think I'm gonna let them doubt y'all and they ain't gonna be personal? You think I'm gonna let them naysay y'all and they ain't gonna get personal? You think I'm gonna let them say all the stuff that they said and that we don't have and we prove that we have it, and even when we prove that we had it, they say it wasn't real. We don't come on. Therefore, guess what? Say God. I respect the head coach a lot. He said some things. He tried to back off of it. Too late. But it's too late because it's Because it's personal. I feel like every one of y'all are my babies. And I love you to life. You too, Coach. And I know how y'all feel about me and the coaching staff and the support staff. Therefore, today, it ain't no regular game. See, y'all just want to win. When it's personal, I want to dominate. Knowing that I want to dominate, give me my theme music.
So there it is. It's all about Deion. You guys go out there and play for me, blah, blah, blah. And clearly he's changed his tune. Here's Deion talking about Matt Rhule this year. He starts by saying something. We'll play the clip. But here he is talking about Matt Rhule this year.
Hey, Coach. Brian Howell, the Bullet Daily Camera.
Okay, I don't mind, Brian. Can we start off from now on with one of the ladies? Just being gentlemen-like. You could go then, but from now on, we're going to start off with one of the ladies. Let's go.
We'll start now.
There you go.
Nikki Edwards, U Sports Report. How you doing, Coach?
How you doing?
Nebraska week.
Yes.
Rivalry.
Yeah.
Last year, there's a lot of hype. You said
It's always a lot of hype.
Yeah. You're going to Lincoln this year. How personal is this matchup? What should we expect?
First of all, I have a ton of respect for Matt Rhule. He's in, I call it our class of coaches. We all, took on a tremendous test that year, along with Coach Dillingham and several others. So I feel like we're a fraternity. So I root for that class of head coaches that came in that year. He was a professional, did a phenomenal job, maybe not the job that he aspired to do, but he has a ton of experience, and I love what he's accomplished in his college coaching career. So I look for them to be physically tough and posing, try to run the football. They have a freshman quarterback that had a pretty good day last week, but we got to do what we do. We got to go in there and do what we're capable of doing. And I think we showed the glimpses of that in the second half of our first game against a formidable opponent.
Is this growth, or has Deion been humbled?
I think it's a little bit of both, but I think there's a realization from Coach Sanders. Nebraska has gotten better. Now he's going into Lincoln Memorial Stadium. And Jason, I was actually there in 2014 when Miami visited there. That is a tough place to play. It's an incredibly large, expansive stadium where the crowd is right up on top of you, those fine fans of Nebraska. And they have circled this game since last year. And Deion realizes one thing. What took place against North Dakota State, it cannot happen. If that team does not get significantly better from last Thursday, they are going to have some real issues with a much better, bigger, stronger team that is a legitimate Big Ten program that's on the upswing with Matt Rhule, who's an excellent coach. You look at Matt Rhule's history as a college leader. That guy rebuilds programs, and I think he can contend for some very big things. Also, Coach Prime mentioned it. Last year, Nebraska had Jeff Sims. Jeff Sims should have been given a game ball by Colorado with as many times as he turned it over. Dylan Raiola, Jason, I don't know if you've seen him. And you know what? When you watch him play and throw the ball, it's uncanny. He has a natural ability just to let the ball go, and it's catchable. Thought he had a pretty good start against UTEP. I'm just telling you, the reality that Deion is facing is we're facing a better version of Nebraska than last year, and now we have to do it in Lincoln.
See, this is probably nitpicking Deion, or his supporters are going to say I'm nitpicking. I would just love for the guy to say, hey, you know what? That approach I had last year was probably a little too much and over the top. I made myself too much of a target, put a bullseye on my team's back. I'm wiping that all away. You learn, you live and you learn and you mature and you do better. That's what I think is going on with Deion. He won't admit it because that's not who he is. But hats off to him for adjusting. I will give him that credit. Now I want to play something for you that I find humorous. Deion is a horrible, poor communicator in my view. People will not call him out on this. We all play the game like Deion is this, he's that. Horrible, poor communicator, and it's why I'm just very skeptical of his ability to compete at this level. I want to play you, this is just from his 19-minute press conference yesterday. This is just from his look at this compilation of him during a 19-minute press conference.
The defense played phenomenally well. Jimmy Horn was phenomenal. Did a phenomenal job. The whole team has been doing a phenomenal job of preparing one another. Phenomenal game, but this is a tremendous rivalry. They bonded tremendously. It's phenomenal to have a tremendous relationship with one another as well. They hold each other tremendously accountable. They have a tremendous relationships with their quarterbacks, but he has a tremendous, that's phenomenal. So it was phenomenal for them.
Okay, jeez.
Someone buy Deion a thesaurus and read it to him, please. Buy
So
him
you didn't find that
thesaurus
phenomenal?
And someone read it to him. No, I
You didn't find that phenomenal?
Tremendously phenomenal. Yeah,
I mean, look, it kind
tremendously
of reminded me.
phenomenal.
It reminded me of Floyd Mayweather. Anytime that you'd bring up a fighter, a potential opponent for years, he'd say, "Oh, he's a hungry young lion," and then or who he faced. "Oh, he's a hungry young lion." Or what about that guy? "Oh, he was a hungry young." That guy had more hungry young lions on his ledger than the San Diego Zoo. I'm just like, I get it. That was not phenomenal. You could have mixed in a spectacular, a sensational, a scintillating. I'm with you on that. A thesaurus, we could just, maybe mail it over to Warren. We have connections over there. Mail it over to Warren. He can hand it over to Coach Prime. That's not
someone's got to read it to him. Trust me. Someone would have to read it to him.
He is a graduate of Daytona College. You take that back. He's got his degree from Daytona, whatever, DeVry College of Community something. Jason, I got something phenomenal, though. A phenomenal thing I want to bring up to you. So you said in your top 10 of today's stars, there's no baseball players, right? Now, I'm not really a baseball fan anymore. I used to be a diehard, but I'm not anymore. I do think there are two players that I know of, which says a lot, and they seem to be on my timeline, and I get a lot of mentions about them. Shohei Ohtani and Aaron Judge. So think about this. Two guys that one plays in L.A., almost going to put up a 50-50 year. Dodger ticket prices are going through the roof, okay? Then you got the biggest, baddest home run hitter playing for the most iconic franchise, the Bronx Bombers in New York. I think they make an argument for being in that top dozen or so, don't you think?
No, because I just think baseball's important.
Not phenomenal. Not phenomenal, huh?
Yeah, and we're doing American athletes, so Shohei doesn't make the list just on that. Or Wayne Gretzky would have been in my 1984 list.
Okay.
Wayne Gretzky would have been in my 1984 list. And I told people, and look, I may be the one person that this is true about, and you guys hop in the comment. I wouldn't recognize if Shohei Ohtani walked in this studio right now, I wouldn't recognize him.
We all look the same? Is that what you're saying? We all look the same?
I did say this morning on the conference call that I wouldn't know him from Steve Kim.
His is dark. His is dark.
Because you're both the tall. You got to be the two tallest Asians in California.
Yeah. I'll say one thing. In the Asian Basketball Association, we would both be fives. There's no doubt about it. We'd both be fours or fives. And one last thing. Great rookie years. I kind of goofed. I should have mentioned.
You're going back to yesterday. Yesterday. Go ahead.
An iconic rookie year. Fernando Valenzuela, 1981. The cultural importance he had with L.A. and Mexicans and Mexican Americans. It was a phenomenon. Fernando Mania. You had to be in L.A. to live through it. Cy Young, MVP, World Series. He was unbelievable. The impact he made. Fernando, 81.
It's so funny. 1981, because we were in 9th or 10th grade, I think 9th grade, and we took a school bus trip. Was it FCA or because girls went to, I can't remember what group it was, but everybody had to raise money, and as 8th, 9th graders, we took a bus trip to Vero Beach, Florida. And I got an autograph. I got a picture of me shaking Fernando Valenzuela's hand. Yeah. I used to. Maybe my mom still has it. I can't remember. Yeah.
Lucky you.
But I think this was 81 or 82. It was the year after, I think, Fernando went nuts. But yeah, he was, you're 1,000% right. He was a big, big deal, and that was a great rookie year. There was Fernando Mania.
And I'll end my segment on my show with this. Another great rookie year because of the impact he had on the field. Randy Moss in 98, Jason. He was phenomenal. Randy Moss in 98 truly was phenomenal. I'll say it again, phenomenal.
Yeah, that's right. That was with, he turned Randall Cunningham back into a superstar, right?
Yes, he did. And Chris Carter, Jake Reed, best offense ever at that point. Randy Moss in 98 just burst onto the scene, just tore up the league. Got to mention him.
They were the highest scoring team in the league, I think, that year.
Ever.
Did they did that team start out 15-1 or something? Or?
They were 15-1.
Yeah, they went 15-1.
And if Gary Anderson does not miss a makeable field goal, and he had not missed a kick the whole year, they would have faced the Broncos in one of the most fun, entertaining Super Bowls of all time. Instead, we got the Dirty Birds from Atlanta. Randy Moss, phenomenal.
Boy, oh boy, 17 TDs. And I remember that season.
In that year, in that era, Jason.
Yeah, and the next year, Jeff George was the quarterback replaced. And so I remember all of that. That was a big oversight. Randy Moss,
yes,
probably number 6 on that list, but he's
Well, he was
certainly in
phenomenal.
contention.
He was phenomenal.
Yeah, phenomenal. Tremendously phenomenal. Tremendously phenomenal. Thank you, Steve. Great job as always. Remember, Fearless is going live starting Monday, 10 a.m. Central Time, YouTube Blaze TV, 10 a.m. Central Time, starting Monday, this show live. Don't forget that. Starting Monday. Tennessee Harmony, next.
I just wish people could see the Kamala Harris that you get when you're just having a conversation with her.
No, I don't think I will.
That is exactly why I don't believe in her. Exactly that. Because I'm not questioning her credentials. I'm not questioning her ability to deliver and resonate in terms of a message.
For us at every moment in time, and certainly this one, to see the moment in time in which we exist and are present.
My problem is you waited too long not to. You know, you VP, you can't do but so much. You got to flow along with what the administration asked you to do. So I blame them more than I blame her.
AI is kind of a fancy thing. It's, first of all, it's 2 letters. It means artificial intelligence.
Sometimes I wonder what AI program Kamala Harris has been using. ChatGPT or ChatCBD.
There was a way for her to come in, I don't want to say a heel turn, but like a turn in her, the character that we saw. Because you had Nikki Haley running around saying we should have chills up our spine.
Right.
We should be scared to death of a Kamala Harris presidency. You're only saying that because she's black. You're only saying that because she's black and she's a woman.
Oh, for fuck's sake. Not that again.
All right, welcome back. Time for some Tennessee Harmony. Anthony, Virgil, Kevin Donahue joining me. We're going to continue the conversation somewhat related to what we were talking about earlier about the focus on race. Before we do that, Anthony, if you could bring us in with a prayer.
Father God, we thank you for your word. We thank you for Jesus, the Christ, who came into this world to save sinners. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. So this topic is, I saw it on Terry Green's Twitter feed. I think it's an older sermon that Vody has given. I think I've seen it before previously, but it's Vody Bakum talking about race as a social construct. And it reminds me, it connects to the conversation we were having earlier in terms of all the hyper focus on, hey, 15 black quarterbacks starting in the NFL, and just how everything is framed in these racial dynamics and how I think it causes more and more division. And I've had friends, Isaiah Thomas at the top of the list, who's been telling me for years, like, hey man, this race thing, it's a social construct. And I've had other friends, tell me that, and I never fully understood it. And then I was reminded of this clip from Vody, and we'll play this clip, and then we'll get our experts' opinions or other opinions on it as well. But let's start by playing Vody Bakum talking about race as a social construct.
It does 2 things here that are incredibly important. One is it identifies the distinctions that matter. And secondly, it identifies the division that exists. Now, these distinctions that matter are important because oftentimes we talk about distinctions and we talk about being distinct from one another in terms of our race. Race is actually a social construct. The concept of race is not a biblical concept. It's not a biblical idea. It is a constructed idea. You won't find the idea of races in the Bible unless you find it in the proper historical context where we see, number one, that we are all the race of Adam. Amen? One race, one blood. We are all the race of Adam. There is less than a 0.2% genetic difference between any of us in this regard. In fact, we're not even different colors. Amen. Technically, from a genetic perspective, from a biochemistry perspective, we're all actually the same color. Our color comes from our melanin. We've all got melanin, just to differing degrees. So it's not that some of us are, this color, some of us are that color, no, we're just different shades of the same color. Some of us just have more melanin than others, and I want you to listen to me on this. Listen to me. Just because you don't have as much melanin as I do, don't you dare think God doesn't love you as much as he loves me, because he gave me more.
All right, so that's Vody Baucham unpacking that. We'll start with Anthony and then Virgil. And then Kevin, I got a little bit more specific question for you. But Anthony, your reaction.
Yeah, we are one race. There are ethnic and cultural differences. Biblically, you would always see peoples listed by their country or by the nation that they were a part of. You hear about ethnicities biblically, but there is one race. The issue that I see as a social construct, we've built so much on the concept of race. We have to be very intentional to not engage with it. Everything that we do, when you talk about quarterbacks, if we were just to have a discussion about, oh man, that quarterback was good, that discussion lands on one level. But when we insert, he's a black quarterback, we've immediately got a completely different dimension to the conversation. You remember Jason Williams in the NBA back years ago, white chocolate.
White chocolate.
Yeah.
There's two Jason Williams. One went to jail, one was white chocolate.
Right, white chocolate. He is phenomenal. He's very talented. And as a point guard at the time, he was awesome. But the fact that he was a white guy flavors the conversation completely different. As it relates even now to crime, if you hear about an officer shooting a citizen, that's a level, and let's say we determine that it was unlawful that he does that. That's a conversation on one level. But if you insert any dimension of race in it, a white cop and a white citizen, you're going to have another conversation of, hey, nobody talks about this. If you have a black cop and a black citizen, we're going to say, hey, if you care about, lives, et cetera, et cetera. If you have a white cop and a black, it completely flavors it differently because we've built so much on this social construct of race. So I would say we have to be, especially Christ-minded about this, we have to be intentional to see one another, not through the lens of race, but through the lens of the fact they are a child of God.
Yeah, I think, and what I hear Vody saying is like, the world has done that.
Sure.
God didn't give us that. This is part of the sifting process that has been done to us, that we interpret everything through this racial lens that is more man-made. But Virgil, I don't want to step on your toes.
Yeah.
Hop in here.
No. I think you're spot on. When I think about the social construct aspect of it, I think about Darwinian evolution. I think about a man by the name of Samuel Morton. Samuel Morton was known as the father of scientific racism. Samuel Morton, he was a craniometrist. And so if you ever looked in your school books and saw these different sizes of skulls, he collected skulls. If you see these different sizes, and he had the Mongoloid, he had the Caucasoid, he had the Negroid, and he had postulated that by the size of one's head, you could determine what ethnicity they were and their, how close to animals they were as compared to human beings. And so that was kind of set up in the late 1800s, Darwinian evolution. And a lot of that had to do with the desire to justify issues of slavery. And so that's when you had, there's a wonderful National Geographic article that's called "There Is No Such Thing as Race." If you look that up, it's a fantastic unpacking of who Samuel Morton was, of his craniometry and his desire to categorize people by what he considered race. He actually posited the idea that there were different elements of creation that took place in order for these other quote unquote races, to be made and created. And so that's the late 1800s, when you have slavery, that's a lot of the justification for this social construct. Vodi is spot on. The Bible knows nothing of races of people. It knows about ethnicities, and that we are different ethnicities, and being a part of an ethnic group only explains it's a descriptor of your difference. Culture is what you do. Your ethnicity is a descriptor of where you come from and who you are, but not whose you are, and it has little to do with the value that we have. Going back to what Anthony said, the value that we have as the fact that we're created in the very image and likeness of God.
Kevin, my specific question to you, and then I'm going to piggyback it and ask you all to, because it's a bit more political, a tiny bit towards it. But as I went down, I saw Vodi's deal last week, I think sometime early this week. But I started looking for other evangelical people who talked about race this way. And lo and behold, I fell upon E. Michael Jones.
Oh, okay.
And E. Michael Jones, the Catholic apologist who's infamous to some degree, but he's a brilliant man. He started talking and unpacking how he unpacked it in a different way than Vodi, but it was about like, hey man, there was a time in the 15, 16, 1700s where and even on into the 1800s and early 1900s where your country, where you were from, where you claimed citizenship, was your major identity. There were two major identities: your citizenship and your religion.
Yes.
And that's how people define themselves. And then we started leaning into this racial thing and came up with it just as a way to promote more division and more conflict, where it used to be like, no, I'm an Irishman and I'm Protestant. Yes. And I found it fascinating. I was like, E. Michael Jones is the same place where Vodi is, unpacking it for a different message.
Yeah, and so when we look at cultures, to piggyback what Virgil was saying, there's three things that make up a culture. It is your geography, where you're from. It's your language, right? Your language creates your world, and it's your religion. Your religion gives you your moral base, right? So that gives us our core, and that creates our nation. And that's what the United States was founded on. They determined that we were going to speak English. Our geography is our geography here in North America. And then the overwhelming religion was Christian. Every person that signed the Declaration of Independence and wrote the Constitution, they were all Christian men. They weren't Muslim, they weren't Hindu, they weren't Jewish, they weren't Buddhist, they were Christian men. So that's sort of the foundation of the nation that we live in. It didn't matter your skin color, right? And it's in order, if it's a social construct, that means it has to be educated into us. And I go back, I look at my schooling. When I went to elementary school, I had a friend named Phúc, Vietnamese kid. I had a friend named Adolf, Pakistani kid. I had a friend named Chaka, black kid. I had a friend named Billy. He was in the trailer park. I didn't know anything about this. We were all friends. But they had to continue with social studies, and tell us about racism over and over again. I went off to college and I took a course, I had to as part of my criminal justice degree, called Sociology of Minority Groups. I learned more about racism in this course than I had ever thought my whole life. So if it's a social construct, that means it has to be socialized into us through schooling, which means it's not natural. I got a 19-month-old boy. He doesn't know anything about color. He loves every kid he runs up to. He hasn't been educated or miseducated into this idea that we're different because our skin color. And if you look at all the things in life, the lowest common denominator is skin color. Like the one thing you've always emphasized, which I love, is shared values. That's what's critical, right? Do we share the same values? We don't care about skin color at all if we share the same values, right? So I think that's the critical function. But we don't get that until we go to school and get educated or miseducated into this culture that we're in today.
Yeah, the public education system spends a lot of time educating us about racial history and racial conflict, and not virtually nothing about values. And I guess maybe because we all can't agree on those, but that's where the religion, your religious beliefs establish your values, and this is what's been so frustrating, or maybe it's coming to light. I'm actually kind of this illegal immigration thing and the impact it's having in certain communities. And I've been going down a rabbit hole. Like there's a long history of like illegal immigrants or immigrants coming in and changing the community. And I'm hoping that it's going to wake people up to American citizenship, our geography, our language, and then our religion. Or maybe I got it in backwards order: religion, then geography, then language. Those are the things that a group of Somali people move into your neighborhood, the language changes, the religion changes, the values change. A group of Venezuelans move into your apartment complex, they're from someplace different. And this is where like American citizenship should be the thing that ties us all together with our language and our alleged shared Christian beliefs. That should be our identity, and then we would start finding more common ground with people. You can't, if Kevin's that shade and I'm this shade, there's no common ground there.
Right.
The common ground is geography, language, and religion, and we should be leaning into that.
We should be, but again, I would even step before we get past to our geography, our language, et cetera. Our identity must be found in Christ. That's where our identity is. He is the one that makes us. He's the one that gives us our identity. And when I look at my relationship with Christ, the first thing that I do if I'm looking in the mirror, I see that I am a sinner in need of salvation, in need of grace, in need of mercy. When I look to someone else, they're exactly in that same spot. They are a sinner that needs a savior. And so that's where we start. The problem, though, is we've now shifted to a place where before I can even engage with you, even as you all laid out about, our country, our place of origin, that carries so many stereotypes now. And that's how we engage with one another. Like if you see someone with a certain colored hat on, that's going to tell you half of what you need to know about them. That may even inform you as to their faith. It may inform you of their values. And it informs you now to let you know, do I engage in conversation or not? That's where we've come as a society. And that's why, in writing the book about identity and helping us to get back, when we get back to our identity in Christ, everything else is subsequent to that. Everything. But it must be intentional. Like we have to, because before long, we've become so natural to it, before long we will start talking about, when we think about crime, we immediately go into, well, in this culture, the rates are higher than this culture and this. We've brought race back into it. Even though we're talking about statistics, we've brought race back into it. When we talk about politics, we talk about helping this particular demographic, we've brought race right back into it. Like we have to be intentional to step to, hey, we got a sin issue and the solution is Christ, our Savior.
Yeah.
Everything after that, hey, now we're just people.
Virgil?
I completely agree. I want to jump off of what my brother just said there when he talked about culture and how we bring race back into it. Our language is so corrupted by the world. When I think about culture, I try to separate the categories. Culture is what we do. Culture is the behaviors that come from all of those things. Culture is the behavior that comes from our place of origin. If we're going to say our religion and our religious faith, if we're going to talk about our language, what we do is the evidence of that culture. Unfortunately, what we've done is we've inadvertently attached blackness to culture, and so you've got people engaged in black culture or black this or black that, and so when you do that, you combine the two, and so what you're beginning to say is that everything that you do is seen through the lens of your ethnicity. Jason, I think that's one of the biggest challenges that you and I and others who want to think of things through a biblical worldview come into contact with all the time. You're dealing with this is what it means to be black. And what they're pointing to is some action that you must then take. And if we don't then take that action, we're not truly black. It's the mending of culture and ethnicity that's really problematic as we look at what's happening around us.
I don't know history well enough, and so I may be throwing you all into a tough spot, but I've literally have asked myself and tried to find, is there any history of a society coming together under the principle of, hey, there's a certain skin color of people that I'm going to bond with, and we're never going to disagree, and we're all going to sing Kumbaya, to where the skin color holds people together? I don't see it. I see values because, again, I look at white people and I go, well, I think Stalin was white. and man, did he kill a lot of white people. And I look, there's just, I look over in Africa and go, well, hold on, man. African people captured their own, sold them into slavery. There's no, this whole bonding over skin color thing, it just doesn't work. There's no history of it, but there is history of geography, language, and religion bringing people together and accomplishing great things.
Yeah, and even in America, the first Underground Railroad was to Florida, and it was Spanish-occupied Florida from 1693 to about 1763. And black slaves would escape to Florida, and they would be guaranteed freedom if they converted to Catholicism. Why was that? That was their religious core. These are our shared values. If you become Catholic, you're free. We don't care about your color. Just come on in. Hundreds of slaves came from Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and escaped to Spanish-occupied Florida because they said, these are our shared values. You get baptized Catholic, you're one of us. We don't care about skin color. You know, and I'm from, and you just have to look at sports. Like, we've all played on sports teams. We didn't care about the race. We were one nation going up against another nation, whether it was football, basketball, baseball, and we were competing on the field. And I'm from Washington, D.C. I distinctly remember 1987 when Doug Williams was the first black quarterback. And I was kind of like, okay, cool. Did we accomplish something here? I'm like, I was just happy the Redskins won. It was a team of white guys, black guys, it didn't matter. And so, but it's just been so emphasized in movies, in television, on the nightly news, and of course in our education system. So it becomes almost second nature to us. I have to see you as black first, which, to go back with what Virgil was saying, means that you're gonna have these certain behaviors. It's forcing me into something that I don't believe.
Right.
All I care about is that we share the same values, that we're on the same team. You're my countrymen. I mean, how many men have gone to war, to Vietnam, to Iraq, to wherever? They don't care about skin color. They're in the same platoon. They're fighting the enemy. And so I think that's what we need to get back to some degree. But it's very difficult because we've been so propagandized with what we've been given.
Well, as I stated at the beginning of today's show, it's like the whole sports world, led by ESPN, Fox Sports right along there with them, has so promoted everything is black history. This is the first black this is the first black this. Now we're all the way to the point that half the NFL quarterbacks starting quarterbacks are black, and they're doing a story on that. I just don't find it significant. I don't find it, and trust me, like, my initial fandom came from James Harris being the starting quarterback for the Los Angeles Rams. So this is in the early 70s, and that's where I became a Rams fan, because of James Harris. And it was a big deal back then. It's like we refuse to acknowledge progress and move on, is what because I don't understand why we're still talking about this. The first picks in the draft, seems like every other year is the black quarterback. No one cares.
Right.
But the constant drumbeat, to me, is a constant drumbeat for division. And I'm right there with Vody at this point, and others. It's just like, and I want to play this clip of Morgan Freeman, and we'll get everyone's final thought on this. Is he being naive here? Everybody's seen this before, but maybe Morgan Freeman's right. Let's play the clip.
Black History Month you find ridiculous. Why? You're going to relegate my history to a month? Oh, come on. What do you do with yours? Which month is White History Month? No, well, come on, tell me.
Well, I'm Jewish.
Okay, which month is Jewish History Month?
There isn't one.
Oh, why not?
No.
Do you want one?
No.
I don't either. I don't want a Black History Month. Black history is American history.
How are we going to get rid of racism until...
Stop talking about it. I'm going to stop calling you a white man.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask you to stop calling me a black man. I know you as Mike Wallace. You know me as Morgan Freeman. You want to say, well, I know this white guy named Mike Wallace. You know what I'm saying?
Uh-huh.
Is he right? We should stop talking about racism and move on.
Not just racism, but race, period. Like if we're committing to our Christian convictions, that's what it would require. I'm just putting out there, because we're so deep into it, we're gonna have to really set a good trigger on us to say, hey, I can't even bring that up. So it goes to the first black such and such to happen. Hey, I just have to, congratulations to whoever, they just got drafted. Congratulations to XYZ for getting the starting position. That's it. Crime happens, it was just an unarmed citizen, to this, or two individuals that got into a fight, that it would be a complete reversal, which I think would make us better. So yeah, he's right on. I'm just saying that the answer is simple, the execution is a little bit more difficult.
I don't even, it's like, I don't think it's any different than, I haven't been to McDonald's now in 2.5, 3 years. Because I can't do it. I can't. Quit going to strip clubs. I can't do it. I don't think it's any more difficult than that. And if I can do that, if I can stop McDonald's and strip clubs, stopping the whole black deal, it doesn't seem that hard to me. But I get that there's a lot of pressure, and Virgil, your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with noticing or noting someone's ethnic group or tribe. It's irrelevant to me. I think the problem comes in when we believe that that noting that is something virtuous, right? It's diversity is not a virtue. It's not a value. It's a descriptor. It describes what you see. It's not something to be praised or worshipped or implored as if because of the level of melanin in your skin you're a permanent victim or you get a gold medal at the Victim Olympics. The idea that we have to operate as a collective on the basis of ethnicity is really what's flawed, and I think that's primarily what's being spoken about and to in that particular clip. I think, man, I'm bald and beige and beautiful. There's nothing wrong with any of those things. All of those things are good things to be applauded and valued. But for me to think any higher of myself or lower of myself as a result of those things, I think is absolutely foolish. Or of someone else, that's absolutely foolish.
Wait a minute, Virgil. Being bald puts us in a different dynamic on this panel, sir.
Kevin, you get the final word if you want it.
I hear you.
Well, as a man with hair on my head, No, stop talking about it. Stop making a distinction. I mean, how do you kill the social construct? Yeah, you kill it. But I love it in comedy, though, man. I want Dave Chappelle to keep talking the way he talks and what he does, because his racial comedy, it is so funny. It is the best. So I think in comedy circles, keep talking about it. But as far as the rest of us, listen, I'm 50 years old. I don't know if I've ever met a racist in my life, like someone who hated someone for their skin color. I've been around 50 years, and I've never met anyone who hates someone strictly because of their skin color. That's crazy. I mean, so but to be talking about it all the time. So yeah, I think what Morgan Freeman says right.
I think most people will think you're naive and or disingenuous. I don't think that because I have a mostly similar experience in terms of, I know some people that haven't liked me or haven't liked people that I happen to like, but it's been based on behavior mostly.
Right.
And there have been people that needed to dislike me based on my behavior. And I've got some friends and people, family or whatever, based on your hell. Some of my friends I don't like half the time because of their behavior. So people will think you're naive and silly, but and I've also seen from myself have preconceived notions about people based on skin color, based on their appearance.
Sure.
And then once engaging with them, it's like, completely different than what I thought.
Yeah, we're all prejudiced, no question about it. Like immediately we make judgments. That's how we're built as human beings. We can't stop that. What I'm saying is that someone is specifically racist.
Yeah.
Meaning they hate someone for their race or religion or anything. I just haven't seen that.
No, people, trust me, and particularly living here in Nashville for me, growing up in the way that I did, predominantly in stereotypical black culture, and then coming here and people from the South like country music, whatever. And then as soon as, I like that song too, that Aaron Lewis song or whatever, we find the common ground and all that just disappears. Anyway, cue up Harmony. Hope you guys enjoyed that. And we'll see you next time.
Up so divided, stop fighting and stand tall. We used to be a nation, one united. Now we're headed for downfall. God, let your light shine down. What we need more than anything now, harmony. Let's make a simple vow. Let's come together now. Harmony. Put all your weapons down. Love one another now. Time for us to wake up. Choose love, my sister, my brother. See through the lies they tell